Today's story will crack you up. It all began on a warm summer night at a friend's party. I had recently moved to the city, seeking new experiences and a fresh start. The party was in full swing, laughter and music filling the air. As I scanned the crowd, my eyes landed on her. Sarah. She was a vision of joy and energy, dancing to the beat with a smile that seemed to light up the entire room. Something about her presence drew me in, and I knew I had to introduce myself. With a deep breath and a hint of nervousness, I made my way through the lively crowd to where she was dancing. When our eyes met, it felt like the world had momentarily stopped. I mustered the courage to say hello, and as we started talking, it was as if we had known each other for a lifetime. As the night unfolded, we found ourselves engrossed in conversation, sharing stories and laughter. We discovered our shared love for music, our dreams of traveling the world, and our adventurous spirits. It was a connection unlike any I had ever felt before. As the hours passed, we danced, laughed, and got to know each other. That serendipitous meeting at the party was the start of something beautiful. In the months that followed, Sarah and I grew closer. We explored the city together, uncovering its hidden gems and creating memories that would last a lifetime. Our bond deepened with every adventure we embarked on. One sunny day, I surprised Sarah with a picnic in our favorite park. As we sat on a cozy blanket, surrounded by nature's beauty, I nervously presented her with a small, carefully wrapped box. Inside was a handcrafted necklace with a pendant in the shape of a key. With trembling hands, I looked into her eyes and said, "This is the key to my heart, Sarah. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded and whispered, "Yes." In that moment, our commitment to a lifetime of happiness together was sealed with a promise and a kiss. Our engagement was a time of joy and excitement, celebrated with our closest friends and family. Together, we began planning the wedding we had always dreamed of. Our wedding day arrived, bathed in golden sunlight. Sarah looked breathtaking in her wedding gown, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. As we stood beneath a floral arch, surrounded by the people we loved, we exchanged heartfelt vows. "I promise to stand by your side through all of life's adventures," I said, my voice filled with emotion. Sarah's eyes sparkled with happiness as she declared her love and commitment to me. The reception that followed was a celebration of our love story. We danced, laughed, and reveled in the company of friends and family. Our first dance as a married couple was a moment of pure magic, lost in each other's eyes. As the day turned into night, we looked out at the world that lay ahead of us, hand in hand, knowing that our love story had only just begun. Our journey as a family took a significant turn when Sarah, my wife, decided to become a stay-at-home mom. It was a decision she didn't take lightly. We had talked about it for months, weighed the pros and cons, and ultimately arrived at a choice that felt right for us and our growing family. With Sarah taking on the role of a stay-at-home mom, I knew that the responsibility of providing for our family would fall squarely on my shoulders. It was a daunting challenge, but one that I embraced wholeheartedly. I threw myself into my work, putting in long hours and taking on additional responsibilities to ensure we had the financial stability we needed. I knew that Sarah's decision to stay home was a gift to our family, and I was determined to make it work. The early mornings and late nights at the office became routine as I pursued promotions and pay raises. My work at the local TV station as a technician took a lot of effort and made me work at odd hours at times. I made a conscious effort to excel in my career, not only for my own satisfaction but also to provide the best possible life for Sarah and our child. Budgeting and financial planning became essential aspects of our lives. We watched our spending carefully, cutting unnecessary expenses while prioritizing our child's well-being and future. It wasn't always easy, but the knowledge that Sarah was nurturing our child's development at home provided me with the motivation to persevere. Over time, I noticed that she was becoming increasingly distant, emotionally and physically. The first signs were subtle, moments when she seemed lost in thought or preoccupied with something other than our family. Our communication, once open and honest, grew strained as she withdrew into herself. I attempted to broach the subject gently, expressing my concern for her well-being, but she brushed it off, assuring me that she was just going through a phase. As weeks turned into months, our physical intimacy began to dwindle. What had once been a passionate and fulfilling aspect of our relationship now felt distant and infrequent. I tried to initiate conversations about our changing dynamic, but Sarah seemed uninterested in addressing the issue. My concern for her and our relationship grew with each passing day. The lack of physical intimacy was only a symptom of a deeper problem. A new and unsettling pattern began to emerge. Sarah's behavior shifted once again, this time in a way that set off alarm bells in my mind. She started spending an increasing amount of time on her phone, often late into the night, and grew defensive when I asked about it. At first, I dismissed it as a harmless distraction, perhaps a newfound interest or hobby she hadn't shared with me. But as the days turned into weeks, my unease deepened. Her phone became her constant companion, and she seemed distant and preoccupied. The signs were becoming too clear to ignore. I began to suspect that Sarah might be involved with someone else, and the mere thought was like a knife through my heart. My mind raced with questions, doubts, and painful scenarios. I somehow tried to sleep over it for a few days, maybe I was too stressed. Then one fateful day I decided to surprise my wife by coming home early. I parked my car and walked into my home. The home was fragrant with scented candles, and I found that odd. My instincts told me to remove my shoes and walk towards my bedroom. I heard the moans and it made my heart beat faster and I almost fainted. I somehow walked towards the room and was horrified to see my beloved wife in a position that I only read in Kama Sutra. The room was full of fragrance that gave me nausea. My wife and her partner had no idea I was watching, they were focused in what they were doing. I somehow took out my phone and recorded a small video and walked out of the room. I got in my car and drove a few miles away from the house, and when I got out of the car, I vomited thinking of what I saw. My beloved wife doing my neighbor, and they did not use any protection. The discovery of my wife's infidelity was a gut-wrenching experience that left me feeling like I had been punched in the chest. The images of her with our neighbor, engaged in intimate acts, were seared into my memory. I couldn't escape the feeling of betrayal, and it gnawed at me relentlessly. Lying there on the side of the road, looking up at the sky, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. The initial shock and disbelief gave way to anger, and that anger soon morphed into a profound sense of hurt. I had trusted my wife completely, and this breach of trust was a wound that cut deep. Questions swirled in my mind, tormenting me with their lack of answers. Why had she done this? Had our marriage been a lie all along? What could I have done differently to prevent this? I replayed our years together, searching for signs, clues, or moments where I might have missed the cracks in our relationship. Bitterness and resentment welled up inside me, but I knew that responding with violence or impulsivity would only lead to more pain. I couldn't let my anger dictate my actions. I had to plan my revenge with a cool, calculating mind. I called my wife and told her I would not be home for next 2 days and would be out for the next 2 days as the other technician was in hospital and I need to fill in for him. She tried to suppress her delight with her pity sound, "I am going to miss you." She did not suspect anyone with some logic would not have believed my lie. I chuckled at my own lie a few minutes later. Then I called an old friend who is now a lawyer and specializes in divorce cases. I met him quickly and explained what I saw and showed him the video I shot. He said I had enough evidence to prove my wife's infidelity. The looming divorce also meant that my child would inevitably be caught in the middle, and that thought weighed heavily on my conscience. As I embarked on this painful journey toward the dissolution of my marriage, I braced myself for a roller coaster of emotions and a future filled with uncertainties. My focus now was on protecting my child's well-being and finding a way to heal from the deep wounds inflicted by this betrayal. I could feel the gears of my plan turning, and a simmering rage fueled my determination. My lawyer had been swift in initiating the divorce proceedings, and the anticipation of the grand reveal gnawed at me. After our meeting, I found refuge in a nearby motel, a place where I could distance myself from the suffocating memories of our home and concentrate on plotting my revenge. It had to be monumental, something that would ensure the entire city would remember my wife's actions. 2 days passed, and I immersed myself in my work at the station and the solitude of the motel room. My mind was a whirlwind of scenarios and ideas, each one more audacious than the last. Returning home, the familiar fragrance that had once comforted me now served as a constant reminder of the betrayal that had taken place within these walls. I refused to speak to my wife and retreated to the guest bedroom. For the next 2 days, I honed my plan, rehearsing each detail meticulously in my mind. At the station, a new reporter had recently joined our ranks. She was young, ambitious, and eager to make her mark. Her relentless pursuit of attention had not gone unnoticed, and I couldn't help but notice that she had garnered quite a following among our colleagues. It didn't take long for me to realize that she might be the key to executing my revenge. With a plan forming and the perfect candidate in mind, I felt a strange sense of control amidst the chaos of my personal life. My wife's attempts to check on me during those days went unanswered. I told her I was buried in work, and she didn't push further, perhaps sensing my growing detachment. Inside, a storm of emotions raged. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, to understand why she had shattered our trust. But I suppressed those feelings, channeling them into my plan for retribution. I no longer wanted anything from her, all I desired was to remove her from my life and make her face the consequences of her actions. The day had come to set my plan into motion, and I informed my wife that I needed to be at the station again for the next 2 days, using the excuse of covering for my colleague who was unavailable. To my surprise, she didn't question it and instead expressed her willingness to wait for me at home. Her casual kiss and words, "I will miss you," stung like a dagger in my heart. Did I ever exist for her? The doubts and pain intensified, but I pushed them aside, knowing it was not yet time for my plan to unfold. With my heart heavy, I went to work and reached out to my lawyer friend to discuss the details of my audacious revenge plan. Initially, he burst into laughter, deeming it the most absurd idea he had ever heard. However, after a moment's pause, he seemed to change his tune and said, "Let's do it." I instructed my friend to position himself near my home, ensuring he could observe the neighbor's arrival. Just as we had planned, my friend was in position, and within a few minutes, the neighbor entered my home. I received a call from him, and he simply stated, "The eagle has landed." It was a surreal moment, and I found myself torn between laughter and seriousness. Unable to contain my emotions, I made a run for the payphone near our local TV station, still chuckling to myself as I repeated, "The eagle has landed." The absurdity of it all seemed to provide a strange sense of catharsis, a release of the pent-up emotions that had been festering since that fateful day when I discovered my wife's infidelity. I did laugh on my way to the payphone. I was on the edge of my seat, my heart pounding, as the news reporters discussed the supposed drug problem in our town. The plan I had set in motion was unfolding right before my eyes. In a matter of minutes, the situation had escalated into a full-blown circus on live TV. I watched in a mix of shock and amusement as the SWAT team arrived, surrounded by camera crews eager to capture every moment. It was like a surreal drama playing out on my television screen, and I couldn't help but chuckle each time they talked about exposing something. My phone started buzzing incessantly, and it seemed like everyone I knew was calling, friends, in-laws, and even my parents. I played the role of the shocked and surprised husband, all the while feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. My in-laws apologized, and they couldn't believe what had transpired. I stood my ground, asking my wife to leave and leaving her no choice but to go to her parents' place. I had no intention of letting her near our child. The very next day, I wasted no time in filing for divorce. My wife had nothing to contest, her betrayal had been exposed for the world to see. She received a portion of my savings and my car, a small price to pay for my newfound freedom. While I had my vengeance, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal and the unanswered questions about why she had done this to me. I had always believed I had been a good husband, and I couldn't fathom why she had strayed. The mysterious caller who had tipped off the reporter remained an enigma, and the authorities continued their search. It seemed as though the identity of the informant would remain a well-guarded secret, buried beneath layers of anonymity. Despite my lingering pain and confusion, I focused on a new purpose: being the best father I could be for my child. I was determined to raise him with strong character and values, ensuring he grew into a man who would never betray the trust of those who loved him. I invited my lawyer friend over for a drink, and we shared a laugh about the audacious plan that had unfolded. But as the night wore on, I couldn't help but break down and cry, the pain of the betrayal still raw. Nevertheless, I resolved to move forward, keeping my child's well-being at the forefront of my mind and cherishing the freedom I had gained from the ashes of my broken marriage. After the tumultuous events of the past, I decided to focus all my energy on being the best father I could be for my child. Our bond grew stronger with each passing day, and my dedication to his happiness and well-being became unwavering. I threw myself into creating memorable experiences for my son. We explored new hobbies, took adventurous trips together, and embraced the joy of each day. His laughter became the soundtrack of my life, reminding me of the simple and profound pleasures of fatherhood. As the years went by, I found solace and happiness in the small moments we shared, from watching his achievements at school to celebrating his milestones. Our home was filled with love and laughter, and the pain of the past began to fade. My son grew into a remarkable young person, guided by the values I instilled in him. His resilience and character were a testament to the love and support he received from his single parent. I, too, found happiness in unexpected places. I reconnected with old friends, pursued my own passions, and built a fulfilling life that was centered around our family. The wounds of betrayal had healed, and in their place, I discovered newfound strength and resilience. While the road had been challenging, it had also led me to a place of contentment and fulfillment. I realized that, in the absence of a spouse, the love and connection with my child were enough to fill my heart with happiness. The future was bright, and I looked forward to the adventures and joys it had in store for us. Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please land the eagle on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.